Cammy's busted. Urian's busted. Borog's busted. Guile's busted. Laura's damn busted. Anti-airs suck. Wake-ups are awful. Frame traps are even worse. Grab loops don't make sense. V-triggering is a freaking cancer and AIDS. This game is AIDS, dog.
Hey everyone, Michael Martin from Yahoo Esports here, back again with a topic this week. We're going to be talking some Street Fighter V in a second. But before we get into that, let's get to the comments regarding the Nintendo Switch, Melee HD, and esports from last week. Shticht says, Melee port, possibly yes, depending on the port. Smash 4 port, most likely. New Smash, definitely. All three, very significant. I don't think Ultra Street Fighter 2 is going to do anything. I'm not saying Ultra Street Fighter 2 is going to be the premier Nintendo Switch esport. I think that game was designed specifically to appeal to the old Street Fighter players, just like HD Remix was. But I think with this particular comment, a new Smash, definitely, I wouldn't say that at all, at least not in the short term. Most Smash games are about 7 to 8 years apart on each console, and we're only, I think, going into the third year of Smash 4. So I would guess that we probably won't see a new Smash game for at least another 2 or 3 years. That's why I think that a Melee port is more likely, because Smash 4 is still relatively relevant, and even though they probably won't support the Wii U console after the Switch releases, I just feel like Melee is more likely than doing a Smash 4 port. All right, last one here. Project Zool. Nintendo has a stiffy for Splatoon 2, so it seems, I can't even say that with a straight face, so it seems it will be testing that as an esport before thinking about the FGC. I think Splatoon was a more successful game than anyone gave it credit for or thought it would be, and it did really well in Japan. So I can see Nintendo sort of hitching or pushing Splatoon 2 as esports. I don't know that it wants to hitch its wagon as the premier esport for a Nintendo console. I think they tried to do that a little bit with Pokken Tournament, and, you know, great game, I guess, but I don't know that that's really, again, I don't know that that's what you want to hitch your wagon to as far as esports. Melee is obviously the premier Nintendo esport title, and I just think that Melee HD would drive a lot of interest to the Switch, which is of course what they want, but as well as bring people in and kind of push Smash as a whole up as an esport. So yeah, you know, Nintendo can push for Splatoon 2, but I don't believe that they want that to be their premier esport title. All right, Street Fighter V. It's been almost a year, and people still have issues with Street Fighter V and the Capcom Pro Tour. Rightfully so. I'm not saying that anyone's wrong to have concerns or to criticize either one of those things, but I think the topic that I really want to hit on this week is something I've been thinking about a lot, and actually Spab Daddy at Mr. Spab on Twitter illustrated this almost perfectly. He illustrated what I was thinking perfectly, in that I think we've gotten to the point where people are coming onto Twitter or going into social media and complaining so much every day that it's almost we've almost lost our voice when we talk about Street Fighter V and the Capcom Pro Tour. So let me quote him real quick on Twitter. Quote, I think we can all agree that Capcom's communication is pretty subpar, but there are people who come on Twitter every day with the same thing. I understand constructive criticism, and you have to give it because it's necessary for things to get better. But I see some people come on Twitter just to complain, just so they can have someone to talk to. And he goes on from there. He's actually got quite a lengthy thread about this on his Twitter, so I actually recommend you go check it out. He voices a lot of feelings I have about this topic. Are we criticizing too much? Are we complaining too much? And I'm going to say yes, but the reason for that is, and I'm not saying you don't have the right to criticize or complain about Street Fighter V or the Capcom Pro Tour. I just feel like we're losing the value in these talks, in these criticisms and complaints, because we're still engaged in the game. People are still playing online. Capcom tells me every time I tell them that the engagement is high online, that we can see it every tournament. People show up to these tournaments, and in last year in record numbers. And until that changes, the criticisms and complaints sort of, I don't know, almost hold very little value, or not as much value as they should have, because we're still showing up. We're still playing the game. I'm not advocating that you turn your back on either one of those things. But what I am saying is vote with your wallet, vote with your time. If you have complaints and you legitimately don't like this game or the Capcom Pro Tour, then why show up to these things? Go play another game. Go play in another tournament. I mean, back in the day when we played games in the arcades, there was any number of games I could pop my quarters into if I didn't want to play Street Fighter 2 or Killer Instinct or whatever. I could go play Tekken or Virtua Fighter. There's plenty of games that we could be playing. Now, I think at its core, a lot of the criticism and complaints come from Street Fighter fans. I think supporters, people that love Street Fighter. I love Street Fighter. So I get where it's coming from. I think it's coming from the heart for a lot of people. But I think we've lost the value of a lot of the concerns because every day online in every tournament, people are still engaged in the game. So if you want them to listen, then maybe it's time to move on and show them, oh, you know what? Maybe we need to really consider whatever it is, whatever the major concerns are for this game, because now people are moving away from the game in larger numbers. Until that really happens, I think they're conflicted because they have to pay attention to every little, sometimes petty, sometimes not petty, detail. And until they're forced to make a change, a major change, things will go mostly as they are. And that's a little unfortunate that they're in that position. I wish it was in a better position. I agree. Capcom's communication is still pretty lacking. And I would like to see more outreach, not just for the Pro Tour, but for the game. But as long as we're still engaged in it and we're still complaining every day, I don't know that that really does anything to further our cause. So, my question to you, do you feel like we're complaining too much? Are we criticizing too much? Are we doing enough to prove a point to Capcom? Or are we just voicing our concerns into the wind and our online engagement and the tournament engagement is hurting our concerns? Let us know in the comments. Feel free to tweet at me, at Bizarro_Mike, 1Z2Rs, and we'll see you next week.